Those who've been paying attention may know that Tim Pool has had a somewhat unfortunate streak recently, since the beginning of the year, of getting swatted over and over and over again. And it seems that last night it happened yet again. This time it was just another case where the police came. Let's just get straight into it and take a look at the clip that Viva Frey shared of the incident happening.
But the problem is it's the business of medicine that they're incentivized to have people be ill so that they buy their medicine. Like if the fire department was incentivized to put out fires and they got paid more for every fire they put out.
We have to evacuate the building.
You better believe that you'd see a lot more fires. You guys, I love you. I think
we're just going to leave keep the live stream going, but we have to evacuate the building.
All right. We'll be right.
You heard it from the top.
The stream will just stay up as it is.
Please stay tuned.
And
we'll
just please keep watching in case something happens, but we have to evacuate.
Do you have the while we're on break, go to TommyAltman.com.
We're gonna grab something to drink. We're being told we need to evacuate the building. So keep watching, keep the stream up. And can you do the wide shot?
Yeah.
All right. Maybe you'll get to watch something happen. I don't know. We have to get out of the building.
Cool.
Let's go.
Is it cool though? Police saying this?
That's Taylor saying.
Let's go. Who's Taylor?
Oh,
Tyler.
okay. Got it.
There we go. Whee! All right, bye guys. Be back.
Nice little setup.
It is a nice little setup. And the camera stayed on that particular shot for the next almost 3 hours at that point. And you can tell just from the reaction of the way that they handle it, the way that they go about it, it's almost business as usual for them at this point, because it's happened so often to them where it's just, oh, I guess we've been swatted, guys. The police are here. We need to evacuate the building. Okay. And at the time, I think they had a potential politician called Tommy Altman on, who is a conservative candidate for Congress. I don't know if him being involved in the show had anything in particular to do with this particular targeting, but I think they are going to be repeating the show later on today with him on again, because obviously only getting an hour of content with him isn't what he was signed up for.
This is something I just don't understand. Like in America, you can just call the cops, send in an anonymous tip, and get someone you don't like, have a SWAT team go to their house, and they will just kick down the door without asking questions, without doing any kind of background research as to, oh, maybe this guy has been swatted dozens of times. There's something really fishy here, don't you think?
I think most Americans don't understand it for the most part either, because it just seems like such an unusual thing to happen that doesn't, as far as I'm aware, happen over here. But when they did eventually come back on, Tim did explain that because it's happened so often, he often receives the complaint of, oh my goodness, how do the police not know by now if it's called into this? But the fact of the matter is, every threat like that, especially in America where you've got open firearm carry and such things, does have to be responded to by the police, because yes, 9 times out of 10 might be just a fake prank call, but at the same time, if you miss that 1 time out of the 10, then you're liable for it.
Yeah, no, I don't buy that argument. I'm sorry. I think that's a safety to ridiculous levels argument. I mean, we saw the police intervention or non-intervention in Uvalde, didn't we?
Yes.
Right. You know, they seem to be much hotter on the trigger when it comes to swatting some random guy on his camera than to saving a school full of children.
Tim also lives in Texas, or at least his studio is in Texas as well, which is obviously the same state that Uvalde happened in. So it is very interesting how it's very much a pick and choose what the police will spend their time with. And I do think, because later on we'll go on to what happened to the quartering as well, I do think the quartering, his house is on a list of do not swat if you get calls in, but they still went to him. So not being particularly familiar with how the police force in America operates, and it does seem to be very much a state by state and even county by county in those states basis, it seems to be a situation where it will depend entirely on where you are, what the response will be. But Tim did give an update to why it was, and if you move along, it did say potentially credible threat, because you've got to remember the reason that the police will show up is not necessarily just because they say, oh, there's something bad is already happening there. Sometimes they will say someone is going to potentially, go and try and attack Tim Pool at his compound. He does have security there, which is apparently very good security. But the police, if they receive those tips, they kind of are obligated to intervene. So yeah, they had specialists en route, and he's keeping details to a minimum for security reasons. I understand that he's done that every single time that this has happened. But one of the most amusing things about this was, while this was all going on, people were in such anticipation as to what was going to happen. If we go along to the next one, Viva Frey pointed out that there were 34,000 people watching an empty studio. for almost 3 hours, and that number actually rose as the time went on.
Wow.
By the time they came back on, it was almost 40,000 people.
Well, clearly everyone
watching.
wanted to get a look at that lovely set he's built there.
They really did. And he does point out that it was more than were watching the State of Union address and the Oscars. And I think I did see other people pointing out that it was more people than were watching Joe Biden's interview on Jimmy Kimmel, which just goes to show that people would literally rather watch an empty studio than hear what Jimmy Kimmel and Joe Biden have to say to one another. And it is very entertaining because what was happening at the same time, I don't think you can see it in this little clip, but Jeremy from The Quartering was posting super chats, advertising his coffee brand while it was all going on, because he saw, there's
classic American capitalism. See an opportunity.
I know, it's brilliant marketing though, isn't it? Almost 40,000 people watching nothing. Well, it seems they've all got their attention fixed. Let's see if I can take advantage of this. And he was just advertising his coffee brand coffee, and we'll see a little bit of that in a bit. But just to point out once again, this was not the first time that this has happened. This is an article from January of this year, and even in this article from January, it starts off with Tim Pool has been swatted for the second time this month. So twice in the same month, and I think it happened like 3 or 4 times in the same week one time. So respect to Tim at this point, to be honest, for even continuing on the podcast when something like that happens so frequently. I do respect
nice and professional
his work ethic there. And they say this news comes after a series of concerning events around Pool's studio. Pool disclosed that the incident was worse than the last time, didn't give full details because of an ongoing security risk, and obviously I would imagine the security risk is that somebody obviously knows where his address is, or at least the address of his studio is, because I went online to see if it was just publicly available information. On the website, it's not listed there. They've got a PO box, so it's not supposed to be pointing directly to it. So it's very interesting that there's this ongoing security risk. Someone knows where his address is, and he's even pointed out in a tweet that somebody actively went to his compound and trespassed on the property when they weren't allowed to be there. So it's worrying that somebody has his address and is obviously got malicious intent towards him. People are going nuts in 2022. What the F were we talking about that warranted us trying to get us killed on more than one occasion? Someone called the police and said they shot and killed 2 people and were going to kill more. And police were not told to enter without a warrant, but said they didn't need one due to exigent circumstances. This is a large house used as a production studio with many employees on site. Since the first incident, the police have made no arrests. So whoever's got his address, whoever's been making these anonymous calls, it doesn't seem, if there has been follow-up, it's not been particularly effective follow-up. And then Poole actually mentions here, last night a man trespassed on our property, bypassing a large warning sign and then entered our house. He entered just after our guests came in, confusing our staff. Anyone entering this way risks serious bodily harm from our dogs and security. He was promptly removed, and I imagine probably there might have been charges put against him. And just to make this clear, it shouldn't need to be made clear, but swatting people, getting the police to show up randomly in a high-risk situation is very dangerous, because things like this can happen. This was back in 2018. A family of a man who was involved in a death due to swatting was suing the city of Wichita. So just this circumstance was the family of a man fatally shot by SWAT officer, and after a prank phone call has filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against the city of Wichita. Andrew Finch, 28 years old, was shot and killed in December, a victim of what is known as swatting, or the making of a false police report, usually of an urgent or violent crime, with the intention of luring law enforcement or SWAT to an address, responding to a false report of a domestic shooting and hostage situation, allegedly by a man in California. Police arrived and fatally shot Finch after he opened the front door of his family's home. So he just opened the door, bang. There you go. But this sort of stuff only happens to black people, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Wow. Very, very interesting thing there. But great police work, guys. He just opens the door, bang. I guess we'll ask questions later. And that's quite telling of what the potential intentions of the person swatting Tim could be. It's not just to cause a massive nuisance to Tim's show, because it's this point it seems that Tim's just used to it. Potentially they're hoping that they will just go full-on raid mode if they call in a serious enough threat, and people might get killed in the crossfire, which would be a terrible tragedy. But of course, whoever is doing this and we don't know necessarily if it's one person or many people, given that some rando is just able to walk into his compound, and he points out it takes about a mile driving off-road to be able to get to his place. So it seems to be quite remote, but the fact that people are able to locate it means that any rando could have his address, and any rando could be the one who is sending these people to do this, which is awful. But as I pointed out, something interesting was going on at the same time as all this, which was that the quartering, otherwise known as Jeremy, was memeing the whole thing up. So I have obtained a picture of the man believed to have phoned in the credible threat to the Tim Pool compound, and here we have a picture of I think it was his name, was his real name, John Goldberg or something like that. His name's Jack Murphy, but who of course was the legendary cook. The legendary Christmas cook, as you could call him. And here's some images of the quartering sending in the super chats saying, look, I think we can all agree this has been a very stressful situation. Ancient Mayans have said that organic teas from my brand of coffee are an excellent way to relax, while it's reported that Native Americans preferred their coffee blends and cocoa. Code Timcast. So he even had a discount with Timcast going on. So, respect to the man for...
I do respect that, but I have to take points away for capitalizing every single word in that advertisement.
That's true, but, Americans have a bit of a loud presence and attitude, don't they?
So.
Even just in text. But he's pointing out, I can't stop and I won't stop. And once again, respect to him for trying to do this, but it seems that Jeremy himself also had some negative repercussions as a result of this, which was that a SWAT team went after him as well, which is great. So whoever was phoning in the report on Tim seems to have been keeping an eye on it and decided that when he saw that the quartering was also trying to have some fun, make a little bit of light of this, decided, you know what, it's your turn now as well. So he says, SWAT team just left my house. Someone texted them that I murdered my wife with a high-powered rifle and was going to kill myself. They deployed the SWAT team for an anonymous text. They all knew it was a SWAT too. Hilarious. And then just because everybody was like, are you joking? Is this, I know you've been memeing it, but is this a joke? He just puts 100% dead serious, although sadly, there were supposedly no body cams worn by the police on the scene, although he does have some photographic evidence of what happened, and he does say that I think he's also got some audio recordings of what happened as well. So hopefully Jeremy will be able to shed a bit more light on what happened and provide some evidence to it. But he carries on saying, I supposedly murdered my wife. The cops were sitting in my driveway when dispatch called me. My effing wife answered the phone. That should have been a telltale sign right there, shouldn't it? They should have stood down at that moment, not handcuff me and make me lie down in the wet grass and scare the S out of my wife. And just scroll down, I think there might be some responses to this as well, where he carries on. Again, this is all for an anonymous text message. And if we carry on again, he does point out to the next tab, Michael. Thank you. He points out we are 100% fine. The cops were cool after they realised I wasn't a murderer, but they crossed a few lines, especially continuing to cuff my wife, who was supposed to be the victim of the murder in the first place. We all had a good laugh, and I have updated their do not SWAT list of people. Although I think maybe I misread it. I thought that he said that he was already on it. Yeah. So it's quite upset. It's quite worrying that the SWAT teams have to have a do not SWAT list of people because it's such a common occurrence in America right now. And it's also worrying to me that they decided, despite the fact that it was supposed to be something to protect his wife in the first place, seeing as she'd already been murdered, that they go, wife answers the phone, she must be involved in it as well, let's cuff her. What's going on?
Yeah, there's a severe logic failure there, isn't there? Like,
there
the
really
murder
is.
victim answers the phone. It's like, quick, guys, it's worse than we thought. They're playing necromancy as well as all this.
This must be some kind of satanic ritual, yes. And this is where he points out that there's no body cams as well in the next tweet over. So he said, no body cams on my video, so it will be weak. But he does point out that thankfully the entire internet won't be able to see his hairy something or other spread out on his lawn. So there is something to be taken from it. And to be fair, in all of this, I do respect that Jeremy seems to have taken this
in very good humour.
Yes, very good humour and the best spirits possible. Because I tell you, if I had been swatted in such a way, purely for trying to jokingly advertise my coffee on Tim Pool's podcast, I would not be tweeting this jovially.
Yeah.
I would not be making this joke, especially if my wife had been I don't know if you could say assaulted in the legal sense, but certainly physically assaulted, I would say, for being cuffed. And this is where he posts as well the actual photograph, so you can see that this did happen. You can see a number of the police officers there. He says this is only a fraction of the response. A bunch of police officers searching his place, searching his garage. So we do know that this is something that has happened. It wasn't just Jeremy going even further with the meme.
And I bet they didn't exactly pack everything up tidily when they left either.
Oh, of course not. Of course not. Interfering in your day-to-day life is part of what the police are supposed to do, apparently. But once again, just to show his jovial spirit, Jeremy just kept going with the memes. Good news is I do have a delicious organic chamomile tea to calm my nerves. The hustle don't stop, you know. I can't knock the hustle. And then Jeremy also just points out the obvious, which is obvious. This must have been the same people who were doing this. I assume they were mad about all the super chats, which, seeing as Jeremy has been labeled an evil right-wing content creator, supposedly for this person who's done this, presumably justifies it in their mind. And he also just points out as well, when somebody's like, okay, so why hasn't this been resolved? He just, in the next tweet over, when Lilith Lovett says, that's ridiculous, I hope they catch the swatter, they won't. And that's just the sad reality of it. As much as he has memed this into something that is turned into something quite amusing, and as much as Tim Pool and as such seem very used to this happening in the first place, he just has to point out the sad fact of the matter is that whoever's doing this won't get caught. They've been getting away with it for months, so you've got to assume that nobody is investigating. Whether the police have an investigation or not, and I would assume at this point they would probably have enough evidence, judging by the targets, where the phone calls are coming from, the fact that this person has access not only to Tim Pool's address, but also the Quartering's personal home address, which is very strange to be able to have access to, that you would hope that the police would be able to do something about this. But they haven't. So that's all I've got for that one. The Great SWAT is happening, and expect to see more of this again. And for the love of God, if this does happen, try your best to remain calm and not get shot by the police, as difficult as that can be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can become a member and find all of our premium content on lotuseaters.com, including the latest Epochs number 57 on Mark Antony, done by Bo and Carl. And if you would like to follow us on social media, you can find us on Getter at lotuseaters_com. Thank you and goodbye.